Welcome back, future scientists. My name is Mr. K. I'm here with Mississippi Public Broadcasting, and we're going to continue our unit on cells and how they're like the city that you live in. Again, cellular biology is super complicated, so I find it a lot easier to compare it to something that we already know about instead of just trying to memorize all the functions of these different organelles. So let's see what we're talking about today. So the first organelle I wanted to talk about is a vacuole. The vacuole, its function is that it's kind of like the storage unit. It's going to store water and nutrients and wastes. To me, I like to think of the vacuole like the grocery store or the water tank or a warehouse. This is where we keep all the stuff until we're ready to use it. Something kind of similar to this is called a vesicle. A vesicle is like a really small vacuole, but it's mostly used for transportation, like moving things around. And just remember that vesicles kind of sounds like vehicles. So if you were driving to school, you probably got in a vehicle to get there. So that's one way you can kind of remember that. So a vacuole is like a warehouse. It's where we store all the stuff until we're ready to use it. The next one is a lysosome. What's the function of a lysosome? Well, inside of a lysosome is a bunch of digestive enzymes, and we use those enzymes to break down wastes and to get rid of them. So here, I think the lysosome acts a lot like a recycling center. You can also think of it like a garbage disposal or the garbage people inside of your city. They're in charge of getting rid of that wastes. The same thing is going on here. Lysosomes is what we use to clean up the cell. And just remember, lysosome kind of sounds like a Lysol wipe. If you got something on your desk or table and you had to clean it up, you probably use a Lysol wipe. And your cells use lysosomes to clean them up. The next one is the mitochondria. Now, we all know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. We call it that because it's the site of cellular respiration. That's just a fancy chemical equation on how your cells make energy. It's going to make ATP. So mitochondria does cellular respiration. It's how we produce all the energy inside of your cells. And so we like to say that it's the powerhouse of the cell. You can think of it kind of like the power plant inside of your city. There might not be one in your city, but a lot of cities have a power plant. It's where all the electricity is coming from. It's how we kind of power all the buildings, right? So the mitochondria inside of a cell is a lot like a power plant inside of a city. The next one up is the Golgi apparatus. Let's remember that the Golgi apparatus, its job is that it packages and processes proteins. And I like to direct people's attentions to the two P's in the word apparatus. So if you can remember that apparatus has a couple P's, that'll help you remember that its job is that it packages and processes proteins. Inside of a city, the Golgi apparatus is a lot like a post office, because before you're able to get that mail or that box where it needs to go, it has to be packaged and processed first. So the same way that a post office is going to pack up and package any proteins or any shipments that you have, so too does a Golgi apparatus take care of the packaging and processing of proteins. All right? The next one up is the cytoskeleton. Well, what does the cytoskeleton do inside of your cells? It provides support and structure of the cell. It's kind of like you can see the word skeleton in there, and then the prefix is cyto. And we've talked about how cyto means cell. So this is literally the skeleton of the cell. It gives the cell its shape and its form, okay? Inside of a city, the cytoskeleton would be a lot like the wood, cement, and steel beams that holds up the buildings and makes the city stand up the way that it's supposed to. It's kind of like the foundation that the rest of the city is built up. So the same way that the cytoskeleton holds up the cell, the wood, cement, and steel beams is going to hold up your city. The next one I have here is centrioles. Remember, centrioles, their job is that they help a cell divide. When a cell is dividing, it can kind of get messy, and so they need somebody to kind of keep all the DNA and organelles in a nice line and make it easy to separate. Here, I think centrioles are kind of like the property lines inside of a city. It can be kind of difficult to determine what land belongs to which person. That's what property lines are for. It's easy to divide the city up and make sure everybody knows where to go. So the same way that centrioles help the cell divide, the property lines inside of your city help divide up the city and make sure everybody knows where to go. The next one up is cilia and flagella, and you can see a couple pictures of these organelles in these pictures. So the flagella are the really long structures. People say that they kind of look like whips or tails, while the cilia are these little finger-like projections. They don't really look exactly alike, but they do have the same job. Their job is that they help the cell move around, okay? So in this situation, inside of a city, there are cars and bicycles, and the cars and bicycles are how you get around the city. Well, the cilia and flagella help the cell move around, and the cars and bicycles help you move around. So to me, that makes them pretty similar. The next one up is chloroplast. Remember, chloroplasts are only in plant cells, and they are the site of photosynthesis. What's going on in photosynthesis is we use sun, and we use carbon dioxide and water, and we're going to produce sugar out of it, okay? So chloroplast uses the energy from the sun to make food. To me, this is a lot like solar panels on a house or inside of a city. Solar panels take the energy from the sun and convert it into a form of energy that we can use. That's really what chloroplasts do inside of a cell, is they're taking that energy from the sun and converting it into sugar that the plant will later use. So chloroplasts are kind of like the solar panels inside of a city. The next one up is the cell wall. Remember, cell walls are only in plant cells. You will never find a cell wall in an animal cell. The function of the cell wall is that it provides support for the cell and for the plant. To me, this would be very similar to the ground or a rock wall inside of a city. Kind of think of it like the foundation. You got to have a good foundation, a good strong area to put a building before you build it up. The same thing's going on here. The cell needs support, and the cell wall is going to give it to it. All right, so y'all, that's all I have today. Thank y'all so much for following along. Y'all are learning so much, okay? Your teacher has some other assignments for you to practice all of this stuff on, so just hang in there with me. Y'all are doing great, and I hope you have a great day.